The Hockey News ranked all 32 NHL teams based on their offseason. The Islanders' grade wasn't great, but we'll tell you why that's not a reason to panic. Coming up.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show. The Hockey News doing a ranking of all 32 teams off seasons. The Islanders, not a great ranking, but we'll discuss why that's not a major concern. The Fisherman jersey continues to be controversial as the Islanders' third jersey contest continues, and we'll get to the mailbag and the fact that the Islanders are going to be involved in a special road game this year, plus our Islanders' birthday of the day. Let's start with the offseason rankings. And the Hockey News basically going with all 32 teams and basically just on their offseason. Whether the teams, the team that improved the most would be ranked 1, the team that got worse the most or that lost the most net talent would be ranked 32. And if you go back to kind of where things are, we're starting to see a pattern. Now, everydayers may recall The Athletic made a similar ranking as to which teams improved the most, and the Islanders ended up 26th out of 32 teams. As far as the Hockey News is concerned, the Islanders did, well, a little better. They ranked 23rd. And the article starts off with the New York Islanders haven't been one of the NHL's worst teams in recent years, but that's damning with faint praise. When you start an article like that, that's never encouraging. But then it continues, there's reasons for positivity on Long Island, but there's also significant question marks about their roster and their hopes of returning to the Stanley Cup playoffs this upcoming season. And I think that the Hockey News more or less got it right. And if you think about it, when you combine the Hockey News and the Athletic, they're both in the same ballpark. The Islanders are in the bottom third of the league. They did not do a lot this offseason, but that, again, doesn't mean it's a problem. Because one thing this organization has done over the last 9-10 years, certainly since Lou Lamoriello took over and then Mathieu Darche as GM, the Islanders have been so busy trying to get that last playoff spot or 2 playoff spots that they have remained stuck in what I have often called the muddy middle. Now I think they're still in the middle, but it's a little less muddy because, well, again, going back to Lou Lamoriello, he spent to the cap, sometimes over it, and still never had more than a team that could either just make or just miss the playoffs. And, he had to, several times over the course of his tenure, lose players for nothing or actually pay other teams to take players. You had to give up Devon Taves, which you got something back, but that was a guy you really wanted to try to build around rather than a young player who you wanted to trade away. You ended up having to send a second-round pick to the Chicago Blackhawks to take the contract of Josh Bailey off the Islanders' hands. You ended up giving away Jordan Eberle in the expansion draft to save cap space when there were other players who would have made more sense to lose. And you trade away 4 straight first-round picks, basically end up vacating the prospect pool, making it, as our Locked On NHL prospects expert said a few years ago, more of a puddle than a pool. And you're still stuck in the middle where you're either barely making or barely missing the playoffs. And Lou Lamoriello's strategy of getting this team ready worked at first. And you had the 2, COVID-shortened seasons, 2020, 2021. The team barely makes the playoffs, but goes on a nice run all the way to the conference final. And then you end up staying with that same core and watching it age without replenishing the system, and staying with that core a little too long without getting positive progress was the final mistake that Lou Lamoriello made that ended up costing him his job. And then we saw Mathieu Darche try to replenish the prospect pool. You saw the moves that he made, trading Noah Dobson for 2 first-round picks and Emil Heineman. And all of a sudden, you win the lottery, you get Matthew Schaefer, you get Aitchison, you get Eklund, you've got Cole Eiserman, who, when the Islanders finally did, after 4 years of no first-round pick, have a first-round pick, and he fell to them at 20. You traded for Cal Ritchie, who was a young prospect who was NHL ready and ended up playing almost all of last year with the big club and is going to be a part of the future of this team. But then you made moves at the deadline, and I don't want to keep harping on them, but you added more veterans to try to squeak into the playoffs and get one of those wild card spots, or at least one of those playoff spots in the Metro, and it didn't work. So chasing 8th place constantly is one way to go about it, and then you hope your team gets hot at the right time. But it's not the way to build a consistent, long-term, legitimate Stanley Cup contender. And that's what Mathieu Darche talked about when he took over. And after the dust settled and we got to this offseason, and the Islanders missed the playoffs again last year after really slumping badly after the Olympics, Darche basically said, this core, because of contracts and no trade clauses and cap considerations, this core is going to have to stay together 1 more year. And then we're going to see changes. And he mentioned the $40.6 million in cap space that, as of now, this team should have next offseason. You combine that with the fact that this was not a good free agent class at all, and the no trade clauses, the bad contracts that we are stuck with, some of which are Lou's doing, some of which are Darche's doing, whether you're talking Palat or Engvall or Shen, or you're talking about Duclair, and there are several others, but I don't need to go through the whole list. The goal this year was basically to tread water, keep the team together, get back some of your injured guys as healthy, and go from there. Will we still see some more moves before the trade deadline, or even maybe before the season starts? Maybe. There's still Patrick Laine out there. Could they sign him to a PTO if he doesn't sign a deal elsewhere? Maybe. But the only additions the Islanders made, Matias Maccelli, who is a middle 6 guy, Mitchell Chaffee, who is probably either going to play in the AHL in Hamilton or be 13th or 14th forward, and Vitek Vanacek, who will either be the backup goalie if Semyon Varlamov cannot go, or be in Hamilton as well. You also didn't lose a lot. The big loss was Anders Lee. But then you lost Max Shabanov, David Riddick, Mark Gatcomb, Carson Soucy, and Adam Boqvist. And besides Lee, who obviously was your captain and your emotional leader for many, many years, but is definitely on the downside of his career, slowing down, not the same player he was even 3 years ago or 2 years ago. I think Gatcomb is the biggest loss out of those other players, and he was a solid fourth line grinder who, is no longer a New York Islander. So, yes, on its face, the Islanders did not have a great offseason. They did not make major additions. But it is part of the plan that this team had. And the troubling thing in the short run for Islanders fans is that the only team in the Metro who ranked worse on, for example, the Athletics offseason grades was the Penguins, who were 28th, two spots behind the Islanders. And then you go to the top, and the Rangers were second. The Capitals were number 3. The Devils were 5th. You've got the Flyers at 8th. You've got a lot of your division rivals in the top 10. So from that standpoint, yes, there is a net loss. You maybe got a little worse talent-wise or roughly stayed the same, while other teams around you improved in the short run. But if the goal is to build that perennial contender to become the Lightning, the Avalanche, the Stars, the Oilers, the Florida Panthers, teams that year after year, the Minnesota Wild, teams that are considered legitimate Stanley Cup contenders at the beginning of every season and when the playoffs start, you can't keep chasing 8th place in the conference. You've got to get younger. You've got to get faster. You've got to get more skilled. And Mathieu Darche is attempting to do this. Now, the catch is he's attempting to do this while officially saying, we're still trying to make the playoffs. And this team is not tanking. And they're not committing to a full rebuild. But they are basically saying, we're not going to spend bad money or good money after bad. We are not going to spend money just because we have it. We're not going to go sign a free agent just because there's a free agent available who doesn't help our team long term. And if we show a little patience in a year, we've got $40.6 million in cap space. And if Darche is smart and savvy this season, whether it's sometime between now and July 1st of next year, so whether it's at the deadline, before the deadline, at the draft, he could add to that $40.6 million with a few smart moves. So, yeah, this is the sort of the second similar poll that says, yeah, the New York Islanders, the offseason wasn't great, but it doesn't bother me because there's a plan in place. Now, will the plan work? We got to see. I mean, you can get an injury to the wrong player. Ilya Sorokin, knock wood, hopefully never happens, but Ilya Sorokin gets injured in November and is lost for the season. The Islanders season is a whole different animal. If all of a sudden, Cal Ritchie takes a huge jump and scores 25, 30 goals, and Simon Holmstrom scores 25, 30 goals, maybe this team is, in a whole different place. But realistically speaking, this year is a treading water year with the hope that next year you can really start to swim when the prospects come up, when Matthew Schaefer is a year older, when you've got cap space to work with, whether it's in free agency or trades. So I saw the ranking. It doesn't bother me. I think it's relatively accurate. And let's be a little bit patient and see what Mathieu Darche can do with this organization. We have got more to get to on today's show. The Fisherman jersey will not go away. We're going to talk about the controversy surrounding that coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs help connect employers with candidates who match their specific needs, like skills, certifications, and location, so less time gets spent searching and more time is spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Usually the biggest difference isn't someone doing more work. It's having someone who knows exactly what needs to happen and helps everything run smoother. So spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Islanders. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. The Fisherman jersey controversy will not go away. And when you look at the 8 finalists of the Islanders' third jersey competition, 2 of them feature the Fisherman jersey out of 8. One in the dark blue, one with a base of orange. And it's amazing how on social media, the discussion around the Fisherman jersey just will not go away. And here's the bottom line as far as the Fisherman jersey is concerned. I can see both sides of the equation. I myself am not a fan of the Fisherman jerseys because when the Islanders had those jerseys, which you're talking about 1995, 96, and 1996, 97, they finished 7th in the division that first year with 22 wins, 50 losses, and 10 ties. And they were a little better in points, 29, 41, and 12 in 96, 97. But again, finished 7th in the Atlantic Division, which was what they were in at the time. And it was not only one of the team struggling on the ice, but off the ice. You had ownership issues. You had the threat that the team could leave Long Island altogether, which is something no Islander fan wanted to see. The Nassau Coliseum at that point was not a new building anymore. It needed to be replaced. They couldn't get it going. There was so many issues surrounding this team. It was one of the lower points in Islanders history. And the players themselves back then were not particularly fond of the Fisherman jerseys. They still look like the fish sticks, and Boomer Esiason weighed in. And again, he's saying these things to get attention and to be funny. But he said he hopes that one of the Fisherman logos wins the third jersey competition so he and other Ranger fans could bring back the fish sticks chant like it never really went away, right? I get it. It's gamesmanship. It's good radio. But, it's basically just off-season content. Now, there is a younger generation of fans who just maybe grew up. If you're 8 years old when that fish sticks logo or the Fisherman logo is the logo, and that's when you started to become an Islander fan, you're going to feel a little bit nostalgic about that logo. And I get that. And if you're too young to remember those 2 seasons in the mid to late 90s when the team wore the Fisherman jersey, you can just say, hey, I like it, the look of it, or I don't like the look of it. And if you like it and you're not scarred by the 2 terrible seasons that the team had wearing that jersey, I totally understand why you would want to bring it back. Now, me, as someone who really does remember well how bad those times were, I don't like bringing it back because it just reminds me of a very difficult time in Islanders history. But I get it for people who don't remember it or who grew up with it, feeling nostalgic or feeling like, hey, it looks nice, I like it. We'll see whether or not, either of only one of the Fishermen will get to the Final Four because they bracketed everything. And by the way, so far, it looks like the orange base jerseys are not looking good. They seem to be the early returns, the early voting. The orange jerseys are looking like they're in the 30%, 35% range, and they are losing badly early on. That can change, obviously, but as of right now, orange base looking like it's not popular with the fans who are voting. We'll see how this all plays out. Still time to vote on round 1. 8 choices. You get down to 4. One of the Fisherman jerseys is going to win, right? It's either the blue base or the orange base because they bracketed this. We'll see. But love to hear your opinions on the Fisherman jersey in the comments, or we'll set up a poll on YouTube. Feel free to vote, to comment. Love to hear what the fan base says. And if you do comment, let me know if you remember the Fisherman jersey days or not, just so we have an idea of, how the vote goes and how it connects. Anyway, we've got more to get to. We will dip into the mailbag for a question about Hamilton, and we'll talk a little bit about a special road game that the Islanders are going to play. And for our Islanders birthday of the day, a native of Quebec who was a goalie who played with all 3 New York State teams, the Sabres, the Islanders, and later the Rangers. He was with the Islanders in 2009, 2010. Let's see if you can guess who this is. We've got that and more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. So let's start with the special road game. And again, I like this, but some people don't. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the Islanders will be visiting the Carolina Hurricanes during this season. And when they do, one particular trip down to Raleigh, we're going to see on January 28th, that is a Thursday, it's Whalers night. So the Carolina Hurricanes, if you remember, they were originally the Hartford Whalers, originally the New England Whalers in the WHA, changed their name to Hartford when they became an NHL expansion team in 79-80 and stayed there through the late 90s when they moved down to Raleigh. Well, they will wear Whalers jerseys, and I think that is always fun. It's a nice nostalgic night. And ironically, or fittingly, the last road game that the Hartford Whalers played as the Hartford Whalers was at the Nassau Coliseum, April 11th, 1997. The Whalers beating the Islanders by a score of 6-4. And, that was with the Fisherman jerseys, just to make it all come full circle. But we are certainly, I am excited to be able to watch that game with the Whalers jerseys and see the Islanders go up against that team. And anytime you're playing the defending Stanley Cup champion and a division rival, it's good. But if you can bring back a little nostalgia for the Whale, I'm all for it. I always liked Hartford. My very first game in the press box was at the Hartford Civic Center, and it's great to see. So time now for the mailbag, and Thomas from Queens. He says, do you see Hamilton making the playoffs and going on a run? Well, Thomas, it's a little tough to say now. We do not know the roster yet for the Hamilton Hammers. We won't know that until the end of training camp. But I'll answer it this way. We saw under Mathieu Darche last year a dramatic turnaround in the Islanders AHL affiliate. They made the playoffs, even hosted game one of their playoff series. They did not win a game. They were swept in two, but they went from a team that only won 4 games at home all season to a team that hosted, had the home ice advantage in round one of the playoffs. That's a lot of progress. There has been a rededication to developing and winning at the AHL level. The organization this offseason has spent money on AHL caliber players. You've got some young players. I expect Sean Aitchison and Cole Eiserman, for example, who are considered prospects, to spend at least the beginning of the season, if not a lot of the season, in Hamilton. You got Daniil Prokhorov down there, Gleb Vremyev. Then you've got your veterans like Matt Luff and Mitchell Chafee and Liam Foodie, guys who, could pitch in the NHL in a pinch. Ethan Bear on the blue line, Marshall Warren. Not prospects necessarily, but guys who can certainly get, the job done short term in the NHL and be better, in the AHL, helping the young players develop and playing well at the AHL level. So, Thomas, it's a little too soon for me to make these predictions, but I think the playoffs are a realistic expectation in Hamilton, and you'll have the excitement of the new arena and the new fan base, and you've got, a new coach and a new general manager there. I think things are looking up. And we'll talk more about Hamilton and their prospects once that roster is set toward the end of training camp. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And, well, Saturday will be the 49th birthday of former Islanders goalie Martin Biron, the Lac Saint Charles Quebec native, 6'2", 186 pounds, a first-round pick by the Sabres back in 1995, made his NHL debut in Buffalo in 95-96, but did not become a full-time NHLer until 2001, 2002. Played for the Flyers and then joined the Islanders in 2009, 2010. And then played for the Rangers for the rest of his NHL career, which ended after the 2013-2014 season. He is now a broadcaster. Very nice guy. Had the chance to speak with him many times. Played in 508 career NHL goals, a .261 goals against average, and a .910 save percentage. One of his best games as an Islander. How about October 31st, 2009, Halloween night, Islanders hosting the Sabres, his former team, at the Nassau Coliseum. Ryan Miller gets the start for Buffalo, while obviously Martin Biron is the goalie for the Islanders. And in this game, a hat trick by Jeff Tambellini paces the Islanders. They coast to a 5-0 win over a very good Buffalo Sabres team. Martin Biron, 38 saves. The Islanders outshot 38-30, but win going away because of a very strong performance by Martin Biron. Martin Biron is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 till the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey. And don't forget, we are here Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're on our summer schedule right now, off-season schedule. But we're going to go back to Monday through Friday once training camp is very close. And we're always, all year long, bringing you the biggest news stories, opinions, and hot takes on your New York Islanders. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever it is that's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYRVSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you anytime. Thanks for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no offseason. We're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Everydayers, we are back on Monday. We'll have all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. And folks, the first rookie scrimmage is now less than a month away. So the season is getting closer. Training camp a few weeks away. And we will start to discuss more and more key things as we get closer to camp. Until then, have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.